People used to say children should be seen and not heard. Apparently the opposite is true of leaders of the Soviet Union. Even so, his words are bad enough to hear. Bill has Thanksgiving off. We have, therefore, an encore appearance by the distinguished Mr. Pat Trese, who doubles as a hazy figure around here.
Edition 361 out of 367. If overnight is getting the axe, what about Wilbur, the jogging turkey? Stay tuned. It's Thanksgiving, what's left of it, and what's left of overnight.
It may be a comment on the absurdity of human affairs that the major news of the day was made by a man who's not been seen in public since last August, Yuri Andropov. At least they said it came from him. The announcer on Soviet television evening newscast said he had a message from Yuri Andropov, the Soviet leader, a statement, a response to the deployment, which has begun, of U.S. missiles in Western Europe. Call it a statement, call it a threat, with a warning of worse to come. Tim Sebastian of the BBC adds some information to what was said on Soviet television, which is where we begin.
Добрый вечер.
Здравствуйте, товарищи. Поскольку Соединенные Штаты своими действиями сорвали возможность достижения взаимоприемлемой договоренности на переговорах по вопросам ограничения ядерных вооружений в Европе, и их продолжение в этих условиях было бы лишь прикрытием для направленных на подрыв европейской и международной безопасности действий США и ряда других стран НАТО, Советский Союз считает невозможным свое дальнейшее участие в этих переговорах. Второе. Отменяются взятые на себя Советским Союзом в одностороннем порядке обязательства, имевшие своей целью создание более благоприятных условий для достижения успеха на переговорах. Тем самым отменяется мораторий на развертывание советских ядерных средств средней дальности в европейской части СССР.
The statement had weight and authority. The West, it said, was pushing for military superiority. Moscow could not allow that. It would take measures to ensure its own defense and that of its allies. And that meant no more talking on medium-range missiles in Geneva, a cancelling of the freeze on their own deployments. That freeze was disputed by the West, faster missile preparations in East Germany and Czechoslovakia, and the deployment of new sea-based systems. Add to that certain unspecified measures as and where necessary.
Советский Союз, и мы снова подчеркиваем это, не стремится к военному превосходству. И нами будет делаться лишь то, что совершенно необходимо, чтобы военное равновесие не было нарушено. Если США и другие страны НАТО проявят готовность вернуться к положению, существовавшему до начала размещения в Европе американских ракет средней дальности, Советский Союз будет также готов сделать это.
It sounds serious enough, and it is, but it's roughly what the West had expected. Moscow was angered by suggestions that Trese and Pershing could force it to give ground, so Mr. Andropov has set out to prove the opposite. He promised he'd leave Geneva, now he's left. He promised countermeasures, now they've come. But that's not the end of arms reduction talks. The two sides will still be discussing long-range missiles. And the Americans insist Russia will come back to Geneva.
You have to feel a little sorry for President Reagan, who was trying to spend a quiet Thanksgiving Day in California, and Ed Meese, too. The president's counselor said, as Mr. Reagan left Washington, this is going to be a no-news trip. Wrong again. White House correspondent Andrea Mitchell reports that now that we know what Andropov said, the question is, what did he mean?
A senior official said the administration does not expect the Soviets to carry out their threat of deploying more missiles in Eastern Europe. First, because it would be too costly, and second, because the Eastern European countries don't want more missiles. At his ranch above Santa Barbara, the president was called by National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane and told about the Soviet announcement. Mr. Reagan issued this statement saying, "We can only be dismayed. It is at sharp variance with the stated wish of the Soviet Union that an agreement be negotiated. Mr. Reagan added, "We continue to seek negotiations in good faith." The president also ordered his national security staff to evaluate the meaning of this, to see if the Soviets' expressed intention implies a new situation. In Washington, Foreign Relations Committee member Charles Mathias was concerned.
Well, of course, it's not unexpected. It's the culmination of a series of predictions, threats, call them what you will, that have been made over the past year. But I think you have to view it as ominous. You have to view it as notching up the tensions between the superpowers.
Senior officials said they still have hope for more talks on intermediate-range missiles because the Soviets have refused to negotiate before and then changed their minds. And they said the Soviets have based their entire European diplomacy on an image of being reasonable, which will not be helped by their picking up the bat and ball and going home. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News with the president in California.
Frankly, this is all scary talk, but the Soviet Union means it to be, especially to the people living in Western Europe, where the missiles are. Here from Christopher Wain of the BBC, an examination of what all this should and should not mean to the people of Great Britain, and just how much of it is just talk.
Lifting the moratorium on SS-20 deployment is simply a gesture. The 300 SS-20s with 900 warheads already in Western Russia can hit anywhere in Europe. Adding to that number has only token military value. Accelerating deployment of the new SS-21, 22 and 23 missiles in East Germany and Czechoslovakia had already been disclosed. They threaten West Germany and the Low Countries, but cannot reach the United Kingdom. But what does deploying nuclear weapons in ocean regions and seas really mean? Certainly it implies that more Russian submarines will be patrolling off America's coastline. But that isn't entirely new. Russian nuclear submarines already patrol the Western Atlantic and North Pacific. So is Russia hinting at further deployments in the North Sea and the Mediterranean to threaten Greenham Common and the Italian base in Sicily with Russia's own new sea-launched cruise missiles? It may be significant that last week a brand new Soviet cruiser, the Slava, appeared off the Outer Hebrides. Although she's designed to destroy shipping, her nuclear missiles could also hit an airbase in Berkshire. And unlike submarines, surface ships provide a highly visible threat.